Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our October working group meeting. I'm going to come back up and do a formal introduction and have you all introduce yourselves. But we do like to start first, before we do anything else, with our safety overview. And I'm going to turn that over to Austin Gray in one moment, but I do just want to make my general reminder that these working group meetings are open to the public. We do have both an in-person option as well as a Zoom option. If you are a member of the public, I hope you'll understand that we do welcome you and we want you here, whether it's in person or by Zoom. The meetings, however, are designed for the working group itself. So the flow of the meeting will be geared towards the working group. Questions and so forth will be allowed from the working group, and we do allow time at the end for comments or questions from the public. So I will come back to that towards the end of the meeting. But I did want to just make sure I said that right up front, just so there was no confusion. But for now, I'm going to introduce Austin Gray, who's not only going to give our safety slide, but Austin is our new project manager for the 5 Points Transportation Work Group Study. So you'll be seeing Austin a lot. You'll be hearing from Austin, and I will now turn it over to Austin.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. My name is Austin Gray, planner with DelDOT in our statewide and regional planning section. Been with DelDOT for about 2 years now, and I'm excited to be working on this project and getting to know all of you. And thank you all for being here tonight. Every meeting, public meeting, starts with our mission statement, which is excellence in transportation for every trip, every mode, every dollar, and every one. These are the 4 key points that we live by in everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. We also like to show everyone our the most recent traffic fatalities. This is a year-to-date update on where we're at compared to last year and the year before fatalities statewide. So you'll see as of today, we're at 111 fatalities for the year, which is about a 4% decrease from where we were at this time last year. And any decrease in those numbers is great. We're always working towards bringing those numbers down as low as possible. But we've actually seen that number pick up a lot in the past few weeks. So just a reminder that as the days get shorter, the darkness comes earlier, to make sure you're driving, driving safe, headlights and seatbelts, all those things you know you're supposed to be doing all the time. We've seen an increase in pedestrian and bicyclist and motorcyclist fatalities as well. So you'll see those numbers are higher than they were at this time last year, as well as some of those other person types. Those are some unfortunate circumstances where there's traditional pedestrian, bicycle, motorcyclist, vehicle occupant fatalities or anything else. So we've had a few fatalities where a vehicle has driven into homes and caused fatalities that way, which is really unfortunate. October is also Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month. Delaware is one of the deadliest states for pedestrians in the nation. We consistently rank in the top 10 every year. So we're trying to bring that number down, and a lot of the work that we're doing reflects what we're doing to improve that number. I'm not going to run through all this. We all have packets, and the information will be online, but we wanted to highlight some of that information for you tonight. And then just general tips. Making sure you're wearing bright retro-reflective clothing when you're out walking, things like that. You can see the difference between someone that's wearing dark clothing versus that bright reflective clothing when they're walking, and just how much more visible they are. Using crosswalks, taking your time, crossing, where someone will see you, all those things that everyone knows are the best ways to stay safe. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ben.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Austin. And DelDOT does that, at the start of every meeting, and I think it's a lot of times it's things we take for granted, and the more intentional and purposeful we can make things like that, I think the more we'll all think about it, and when we're in those situations. So, safety is at the heart of everything DelDOT does, and so we want to make sure that we bring that up, and it's at the forefront of every meeting. Yes, Councilman.
Quick question. Do you break the pedestrian fatality number out by county?
I believe we do. I don't think that slide shows it, but I believe the more detailed report shows that.
I'm just curious, Sussex is the biggest, part of that number, or if it's more Wilmington, or?
Do we know that? If we don't, we'll get that answer.
Yeah, we actually have our pedestrian action plan has heat maps per county that, that show the clusters of the pedestrians, so it has, excuse me, has it for the three counties. It's online, if you do Delaware pedestrian safety, pedestrian action plan, and then you can actually zoom in, drill down to the corridors, you can click on the dots, and it'll tell you if it was during the day or night, wet, and stuff, but it's a very good resource. It's a GIS tool that pulls it from the, I think it's the highway safety or the, I forget the source it is, but it's the source that holds the
So we can get that, for the next meeting, or it'll be the following 5 points or some way, but we'll try to get that for you, Councilman. Okay. And that was Pam Steinbeck responding just, no, it's okay, I should have said that. So, well, you've already sort of addressed one of my things, which is we do have our friends, the owls here. We've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend or something for our owl. Now we have two.
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, try to speak loudly, identify yourself, because we do have people on, both on Zoom, and these are put on our website, so that if someone wants to go back and listen, that way they know who's making a comment or question, what have you. I do want to do one other thing that's not on our agenda. I don't want to save it to the end. I was hoping Speaker Schwarzkopf was going to be here tonight. This will be his last working group meeting, and even in his absence, he's been a part of this working group since day one, back for the first phase of it. Really helped launch this and keep it going, and you know, really was instrumental in this. And so I just wanted to publicly thank him for everything he did for the 5 points transportation study and the working group. So just wanted to do that. I also figured if I said it now, he would then show up probably, and I then would have to say it again. If I didn't say anything, he wouldn't show up. So it's my way of hoping karma brings him here. Okay, so our agenda, I will go over some of our introductory slides in a little bit, but we will have area construction updates. So there's a lot going on, a lot of things that are on the top of people's minds. So we will have George Pearson, Brian Behrens come up to talk about some of the projects that are out there going on. We are going to have a presentation by Gene Donaldson on congestion management and traffic operations. So Gene is always someone that this group looks forward to hearing from. Leah's going to come up and do a low-stress bikeway study update, as well as we always do, talk about our implementation plan status. And as I've mentioned to all the members of the public, we will have time at the end for public comment. So again, for working group members, if you are here on Zoom, and I'm going to check who we have here, but whether you're on your computer or tablet, just click the raise the hand feature, and then and at the bottom of the screen, as we have circled. And if you're calling in by phone, you're going to press *9. But we do want you to engage in this meeting, but we need to know you want to engage. So just raise your hand, and I'll get you as quickly as we can. So I do want to go around and start. We'll start over with Todd and just working your over. Again, try to speak loudly and just introduce yourself so everyone knows who's here.
Thanks, Andrew. Todd Lawson, County Administrator.
John Riley, County Councilman, 5th District.
Kathy Coleman, Villages of 5 Points resident. Mary Roth, Delaware Greenways, Historic Lewes Byway.
Marie Dave, manager.
Mike Tyler, Delaware Bicycle Council. Bob Fisher, retired electrical systems engineer, volunteer. Here from the beginning, and I hope to be here at the end. We're never ready.
I don't know how I can go. Pam Steinbeck, Director of Planning for Delaware.
Bill Davis here on Sussex County Association of Realtors. Back on from the Planning and Zoning Commission for Sussex County.
Russ Huxtable, Senator for the 6th District. Hello, Scott Thomas with Southern Delaware Tourism.
Okay, great. And we do have Lloyd Schmitz on by Zoom. Lloyd, if you want to come on and say hi to everyone, you can.
Hello, everybody. Lloyd Schmitz, local residents, someone with a visual impairment. Thanks.
Lloyd. And again, I don't think we have any other working group members on, but, I didn't see you, but if you are on, please come on and let us know.
I didn't have, Ryan Bond,
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know, Representative Parker Selby could not be here. Ryan had passed along an email. I didn't know Ryan was actually gonna be on, but Ryan's on, representing, I assume, Representative Parker Selby. So thanks, Ryan. Okay, so, Leah, you just wanted to make one quick comment.
Yes, so those of you who do have a printed version of the handout, the congestion management slides are up next, but that's not what's actually up next. George and Brian are up next for construction updates, and then we'll come back to Dean. So apologies, I will send around a correctly ordered packet following the meeting.
So again, in the notebook materials that you have, we do have the agenda. We have the slightly out of order presentation. We have our draft minutes of the April 22nd, 2024 working group meeting. And we do have a list of our upcoming meetings as well as the updated implementation plan. If anyone has any questions about that, I doubt there will be, but I do want to go to the meeting minutes and get an approval of those. I know that they were, we changed our format a little bit on how we're doing our meeting minutes, but I also want to make sure people know that we do have a copy of all meetings that are on the website. So if there's something you wanted to hear again or rehash, you can go there. Sometimes there are some audio issues, so we always like to make sure we complement that with our meeting minutes. I think between those two things, you should be able to get to about 95% of everything you might want to hear or see. But with that, did anyone have any questions or anything about the meeting minutes before I take a motion? Okay. Oh, yep, Mary?
I think if memory serves, just some of the members present versus virtually is a little off.
A little off. Do you remember? No? Okay. Well, we'll take a look at
There's a
that.
couple I could tell you weren't here.
Okay.
We're on virtually, but.
For example, I was virtual,
Okay. Well, we'll take another look at that to correct that, just to make sure it's accurate, as accurate as it can be. But with that, question and comment, and we'll look into that. I will take a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Motion to accept the meeting minutes?
Thank you, Mary. Is there a second? Thank you, Bill Davis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. Well, there was enough ayes even without going to Lloyd to see. If it was a close, if we had a hanging chat or anything, I was going to go to Lloyd to break the tie, but we don't need to do that. So, okay. So we're going to bring George and Brian up again. If there's something in any of the presentations that you're going to hear that's confusing, please feel free to raise your hand. If not, why don't we try to get to the end of each presentation and then we'll have plenty of time for all questions, okay?
Thank you. Good evening again, everyone. George Pierce and Brian Behrens. I'm going to start with going over some, I think we're just focusing on Plantation Road for construction update. Then we have a lot of stuff that's about to start that Brian's going to hit on from the design group. All right. Yeah, here we go. Plantation Road improvements phase 1, then US 9 widening and Minos Conway grade separation. All right, so Plantation Road improvements, I think everyone here is familiar with what's going on. We're about done out there. The big thing I wanted to highlight is we are about to implement a small portion of the US 9 widening improvements. We've added it onto the project. Believe it or not, sometimes we watch after we build it and we get feedback and we react to it. So one of the issues we saw this summer, probably not the ideal time to open a project like this, Memorial Day weekend, and when it's going to be as bad as it gets, but we noticed there's an issue right now. I think, yeah. All right, so right now, here's what we have, and we're going to focus on just the section from the connector to Route 1. So what happens, what we noticed is we built in capacity to kind of give you a free ride out as you're coming from the connector onto 9. And then you have 2 lanes that continue into Lewes. But we've watched the camera, Shantae had it on in her office, I'm down talking to her. What we've noticed people are not utilizing both of those lanes going into town. I'm sure everyone here is sad, especially if there's a truck or something blocking that. We don't know if it's, you know, people that aren't familiar with the area aren't getting over and using it, or even if you are familiar, you know traffic's gonna be bad on the other side in Savannah, so why get over if I'm gonna get right back? But we need people to get over and use both of those in order to free up, and what was happening is traffic was backing up into the roundabout, waiting to get right, and we had a free lane open. So we talked with Brian, and part of this in the Route 9 widening was to improve this, so we said, hey, let's try to bring it into this project, find money and get it in now. So that's what we're looking to do. And it should help a lot for that situation where you have traffic backing from Route 1 through the connector and into the roundabout. So here is what it's gonna look like when we're done. That right turn is gonna feed directly into the through lane into town. And then if you envision, if you're coming through 9 now, you'd have to come all the way through and across to make the right, which should be fine in most instances, other than, you know, these real big peak times where it was backing into the roundabout. So the plan is to get that started hopefully in the next 2 weeks with the widening and curb work. And we're trying to figure out right now when we can get it paved because it's coming into winter. So we're not sure if we're gonna be able to get it all wrapped up by December or have to push it to next spring. But either way, we'll have the widening in and done, and it'll be more than ready for when we hit those peaks next summer.
So, Bill Davis, my one question on here is, I see your right arrows, but my 2 cents, you need straight arrows in that second lane. I can tell you, somebody that travels it all the time, most of those situations are trucks coming into that when it gets all stopped up like that. And I think you just need to retrain your brains, they can go straight in that right lane, so it's not something they have to.
Yeah, we'll check it. I'm pretty, they might just not be on display, but I'll definitely take note and check that. We're also, there's overhead signage out there that isn't the clearest right now because it just gives the route name and not the road name. And you know, people are like, what's 9? What's 1D? So we're changing that signage at the same time to reflect Plantation, Beaver Dam. So it helps going into the roundabout, Wood Lane to get in, and we're gonna do the same on the other side coming out, so that'll help. So we'll definitely check the striping, and we're also gonna get overhead up.
And then on the other side, when you're talking about that, I don't know if there's room or not, but those 2 lanes coming across, because you have 1 lane going straight, a lot of times I'm seeing that center lane, it's a turn lane. A lot of people are in that lane to actually go straight.
To go straight for, okay, we'll definitely look, you're talking to connector through where the ACE was.
Right.
Yeah, okay. No, thanks for the feedback. We'll look into that too. We've been, learning with, you know, we didn't realize so many people look at the signs. We thought they all just followed your GPS now. As soon as the signs went up.
There was a similar situation in Dartmouth Drive when they first reconfigured that with the left of the through and people running into each other and they were doing that. So it's, I mean, that's a wider situation with more lanes, but it sounds like the same phenomenon, the same process. Good luck.
Yeah, we're ongoing. We're taking in, you know, we're getting a lot of input on the signage and the striping, so we'll try to get it.
And again, you know, the working group process, don't feel you have to wait to a meeting, for a meeting to share feedback of something you're seeing. You know, if there's something that you want to share with us, get an email to Austin. You know, we can get it to the team. I mean, that's part of the role of the working group is to be the eyes, the ears, of the public. If you're hearing things from your neighbors, you know, share it with us. Let us know by email.
Yeah, and always I try to direct everyone to that the DelDOT doing business, if you report a problem, it doesn't have to be a problem, such as a lights out. You can say, hey, we just had a recent meeting with communities with Representative Polofsky and concerns people had in that area. And I was telling you can go right on there and say, I'm having trouble getting out of my development. I don't think the signage is right. We need trees cleared. And that doesn't go to some magic inbox. It gets funneled down to the person that's going to respond.
George, say that one more time, and I really want the members of the public who are here to hear that, because you may not have the same access to Austin as the working group does, but you have the same access to Delaware. And I want to make sure that you hear, you know, if there's an issue, if you're seeing something or you're confused or you want to know something, go to
DelDOT.gov and under, right on the main page, there's report a problem. And in there, it'll give you a bunch of, hey, I'm reporting a traffic light out or a access issue or, a roadway improvement. You can suggest a project and it'll go to Pam's group to get looked at as whether it's gonna get elevated into our master plan. It's a very good resource, so.
Thanks.
Somebody, questions at the end, I just saw some.
Did somebody come up?
I just wanted.
Yeah, we'll save those till the end.
All right. I think Brian we're gonna transition to the rest of Route 9.
Well, I'm gonna stop there, because I know that's so front and center, so I know I said I was gonna wait till the end, but I'm already breaking my own rules, which I love to do. So, Senator Huston.
Yeah, I just had one clarity. We've gotten a lot of questions about the left turn going west. Now it's a double red arrow, but there's a lot of space that happens when people come in from 9. Because it's a double arrow, they can't take that left-hand turn. And people were wondering, could they make it a flashing yellow light to allow movement? So instead
So
of.
you're saying westbound on 9 onto the roundabout to
Yes.
flash that?
Yeah.
We can talk with our traffic section on that. I do not see that as a safe movement because of when traffic backs up there, you're gonna have, you'll have some conflicts, but we'll pass it on to Peter's group, Peter Hague, to take a look at. That's just a hard ask with the geometry out there.
Yeah, I do want to just remind, those people joining by Zoom, again, we're glad you're joining us. We're not going to take any questions until the end, unless you're a working group member, but we do have it here. We will pose that at the end of the meeting. Okay.
All right.
Sure.
To Russ's,
Good.
to Russ's point on that too. If you had a second lane that was going, I don't know what your distances are there, but if you had a second lane that was going straight on westbound, that would help with that problem too, because like you said, everybody's lining up in that section.
That's what Brian's here to talk about. We can only get one side. Money's
Todd, do you have a question?
So the paving has stopped a little bit west of this picture. Is there any plans for some of that paving to happen now as opposed to wait for the Route 9 project? This is like temporary pavement that's in place.
Louder.
Yeah, so we've only done the final paving on the westbound portion. The
Right.
eastbound still all gets redone back to that same limit, but the project stopped right at about the new Ace.
Right.
So-
So that's imminent, the paving going, is that coming east?
East, that's, we wanna get this, we have to get this done, that's what's kind of put that on hold, was getting this through. We're waiting to get the drainage fabricated, so it's touchy on timing. I'm hoping we get it done before the end of the year, but it might be under base all winter until spring because of the type of hot mix we're using. We can't put it down in the cold weather.
Gotcha.
So,
You're saying you're tying it to this widening here?
yep.
Okay.
Yes, Mary?
When you get into the widening portion, is there any chance, let me rephrase. When you get into the widening portion, if there's any chance you're going to do it at night, like some of the work that was done, can you kind of broadcast that a little bit more broadly so folks are too broads in that sentence, but anyway, can you make that a little more well-known versus it being a surprise of all sorts of noise in the middle of the night?
Yeah. Those nights were a surprise to me. Yes.
At least we're all together in the surprise.
Yeah.
But the surprise probably affected, I guess, you more than it affected George, is what you're saying.
I got quite a few thoughts.
Well,
Yeah.
it affected both.
Yeah, it didn't wake me up as much as
All right. I mean, that's always the goal of, obviously communication, notification is something we talk about all the time. Unfortunately, there always are exceptions beyond people's control, but we will do our best to make sure the contractors know, we need to know that. So anything else before we bring Brian up? And again, we'll still have time for questions. So if something else comes up, but Brian, why don't you come up and finish your part?
George, nice to see you all again. So not exactly the project that we have in construction or imminent for construction, but we thought it was appropriate since we just had a public workshop on this one last month. and we're gonna be talking about stuff that George just talked about. To just give a brief update on the 9 widening, this project basically ties into what George just got done with Lincoln Plantation Road. It does widen, Route 9 from Coastal Highway, to just west of Old Vine, for a 5-lane section, basically, which is 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane, drainage and, pedestrian and cyclist improvements, kind of throughout as well. I'm just gonna kind of take you through the concept that we have. It begins, at, near Old Vine, where we kind of tie back into the existing, typical section with 1 lane in each direction. And then we start to widen out, heading towards, Coastal Highway. The shared use path that we have is on the south side. That's the one that's kind of shown there in that pink color. That's 10 feet wide. Some spots it's 8 feet wide, just where we are tight. And then we carry that typical section kind of all the way through. The sidewalk is on the north side, but we're not going to rip out any shared use path that already exists. We'll be leaving that there. New signal there at Nassau Commons, that will be part of, I believe, the development that's going on soon. Just again, quickly, it's kind of the same typical all the way through, just 2 lanes each direction, center turn lane for the movements, for those left turn lanes or left turns. And then until we get up to Coastal Highway, which is basically what George just showed. It's going to tie in what he's about to build for that extra bit of widening from the connector up to Route 1. And it will tie into, there's some slight reworking of the intersection that has to happen that unfortunately was unavoidable, but ties in with the roundabout project. So this project, we just had a public workshop. The comment period just closed Friday. So the project team is looking at all of the comments that we've received. We are likely going to develop like an FAQ similar to what we've done on other projects, similar themed comments that we usually get with an answer. One of the updates that we have just gotten is that we're going to be pushing a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit through this section of the project limits, which is something we're doing more and more on capital projects. So that's an update for you all. That's brand new. That's really about it on this. I don't know if there are specific questions about the scope of this project, but this is all available on our website as well. We'll be.
I have a question about, maybe you're touching on the same thing. The stormwater management that's proposed here, you've already discussed with Mr. Lawson that probably needs to move into the development that's going to be developed in that location.
Yeah, so, not that
Point there.
Not that we work in silos, but we have to a little bit, that is not technically real. Once it becomes such, we coordinate with those developers. That happens on any project, any capital project that has a development activity. And we are aware of that and are sensitive to that, and we'll do our best. But that is currently where we are showing our stormwater.
Yeah, Councilman?
That, you're right, Scott. That was the immediate pushback we got from the public meeting we had. But the other question is, and I don't know if it's the right time to ask this or not, but has anything begun as far as land acquisition or planning or, engineering for the new road that's going to be, I guess, the connector all the way down to Mulberry Knoll?
No, so this will tie into that eventually, or Mulberry Knoll will tie into this, I should say, whenever that gets built, back at this intersection here. So no, that I don't have the year of when design funding is available.
No estimate on, because, you're probably aware that there's an application pending right now for a significant amount of development there. And, it would be nice to know what Delaw's plans are for that.
DelDOT has, from my perspective, as the, on the design arm of the department, when we have, that's my to-do list, basically. So right now I have that line item, the Mulberry Knoll extension, and I forget the year when that funding is there for me to begin designing that. But that is kind of the long and short of it from my perspective. I don't know. You want to expand on that, man?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about that's the north side of the right? Yeah, so I think I thought as part of their pending approval, shall I say? I'm not exactly sure on where they are in that process, but, they are slated to build their section of Mulberry Hill on their property. I believe it is part of the project. But that being said, that the Delaware part will hook up with the developer build trail.
So the developer would be required to build that.
That is, I believe that was part of the approval,
Double part of the Christian.
yeah, I mean,
But the rest of it
It
is
is
gonna
part of
be needed, it's gonna go promptly right behind it.
Right,
sure, yeah, I mean, the other section is Delaware is going to build that, but we don't even know specifically when the developer is going to finish their part, like, it literally was just that.
But they don't have final approval from council yet.
Sure.
So it's still,
Scott?
Yes, Scott Thomas, and just to tag on to that, I know it's all pending and all that,
Yeah.
but would have to work
Yeah, I
together.
wasn't exactly sure where that was in the.
planning and zoning is reviewed at, council. So
Okay.
So my add-on question that would say, when that should happen, would it go beyond Mulberry, Henlopen, TID and developer into the westerly phases of Route 9 as well?
Would the developer be doing that?
I mean,
Route 9 from the beginning of this job to Dairy Farm is already in the CPC, so that will be on Ryan's to do this guy to do this over. And then that will get done. But we don't have any more widening plans yet in the CPC from the Dairy Farm west.
Yes, Bob?
Bob Fisher, I've become aware in the last month that there's a significant lack of public awareness about the extensive coordination between the county and DelDOT and developers in terms of how DelDOT responds to the approvals that you do. And I see DelDOT getting a lot of criticism for not keeping up with the road infrastructures. I have tried in my limited way to explain that, and I'm getting nowhere. I would beg DelDOT not to be bragging about what they do, but to just make it clear in your philosophy, you can't build the field of dreams. You've got to wait until the demand is there, and then you analyze the requirements and you respond to it in arrears, as opposed to before the development shows up. I think a majority of the public is expecting DelDOT to be prescient about what's going to be needed. And I'm asking DelDOT publicly to do more effort to enforce this. It's the same as the roundabouts. There was so much criticism about the roundabouts. So DelDOT, I mean, I've been in multiple states. I've never seen a better transportation department than DelDOT, the smallest state I've lived in. It's phenomenal, especially for the size. So I want to make that clear. But I think DelDOT could do a better job of informing people of the way it works. And I know you invite everybody. You can get 20 or 30 people, but you need to make the whole Sussex County understand the way who's doing what, when it does, and I'm just saying, stop blaming DelDOT. They cannot predict the future. They have to wait and see what is actually the demand, and they work very closely with the county and with developers on that. It's clear in these meetings, but I don't think it's clear to the public. Thank you for my rant on.
I would make a candid statement here, and it's not, please don't take this the wrong way, but from my chair, what can be difficult at times is we get plus reports, proposed applications. And we look at, the responses from various agencies, whether it's fire marshal or, DENREC or DelDOT, and generally speaking, the comments, I believe DelDOT takes them in silos, one at a time. Like this particular project, we believe we can handle, with the given capacity of the road and so forth. And they don't tend to look at it as a cumulative. And Route 9 is a perfect example because, you know, the proposition that's pending at the vineyards and farther up the road, you know, we have two large applications that are, one's underway and one is working its way through the system. And combined, you know, the road is already close to capacity, if not over it. Combined with all this new development coming on, it would seriously overburden the road. And yet from the perspective of one person that's got to cast a vote on yay or nay, if the fire company is saying they can handle it, then, you know, signing off on it, and Del-Dot's looking at it and, you know, saying, yes, we can handle it. It doesn't, I don't have any basis to object to any development that's proposed. I don't have any way to come back and make it difficult for planning and zoning to come back and put conditions on that would say, you know, tentative, yes, but maybe not right now, or, you know, you've got to accomplish this first. And I know what you're saying about, you know, the build it and they will come concept, you know, you got to wait until it's built, but we can see ahead. We can see far enough ahead that we know that there is a significant amount of development coming from the vineyards to harvesting. And yet, in fact, I believe that, I could be wrong, but I believe that entire stretch of road qualifies to be dualized today as we sit here. And yet plans are not really materializing until probably 10 years out. So we're gonna have a significant amount of time where the roads are seriously overburdened. I mean, and that's just what it looks like from my chair. So I'm just being candid.
I think coastal corridor study has proved all everything you just said and looked at all that stuff, right? And that's all the information that came in through coastal corridors, mirrored everything you just said.
Well, I mean, there's no yes or no. I mean, those are, you know, all good comments. I mean, I think one of the great successes of this effort has been the coordination between the state and the county, working together, trying to kind of collectively get things done. No system is ever going to work perfectly. I'm certainly not here to speak for Del-Dot in terms of what their rules allow them to do when evaluating developments and so forth. But, you know, these are difficult. The balancing of all of these interests is a very difficult process, and you rarely get it perfectly
There's more
right.
involved than just the roads,
Right.
clearly, but what I had a conversation with the fire chief in Georgetown this past week, and they have recently given us some feedback on a particular, the town of Georgetown actually, feedback on a proposed development. And they said they didn't believe they had the capacity to accommodate that new development. Well, I mean, that's something that I could hang my hat on, you know, as a councilman and say, you know, fire company's not signing off on this, therefore I can't vote to support it. If Del-Dot came back and said, you know, here's where the road is, with this new development, it's gonna overburden the road to the point that we don't believe, you know, that safety is compromised, or, you know, our plans aren't going to be able to improve this road in a timely fashion. That would give me something I could hang my hat on and say, you know, now's not the time to do this construction, you know, because that's one of the biggest things we get criticized for is, you know, we sign off on everything and Del-Dot's left to deal with it, you know.
I think I may have heard that criticism.
Yeah. So,
but
I'm asking for more candid feedback from Del-Dot in these clusters.
Sure, I mean, it's Pam, and I can appreciate that, but the difficulty lies in is that, as, you know, we don't have where a project comes into plus, and when it goes into the development coordination process can be years, they can not ever materialize. So trying to hang your hat on saying, like Del-Dot is saying that this development shouldn't come in. It's very hard trying to figure out when that I mean, but our job is the law is safe access on the citizen paving. So our job is to make sure that the developer goes through our manual and make sure what the size of that development is and how big that development is not our part. We're required to make sure that the developer builds a safe entrance and mitigates for their traffic. But we can't, with the build out, and that's why the SIDs are so important, and so that's a joint planning effort. It's the ones that are outside of that start to get a bit more complex on knowing when improvements should be made. But yeah, I mean, they are complex problems for sure. And I know a lot of the sentiment has been, well, you know, if you know it's going to be bad, why don't we just widen it now? And unfortunately, from our standpoint of having to sit down with a property owner that's going to take half of their house, you know, half of their front yard and say, well, we don't have the numbers to say that's gonna what, you know, we can't be in that position. The need has to be there before we can start our, you know, engineering process. But it is, I mean, you're in a position, I am too, it's just trying to communicate and be as transparent, you know, as we possibly can.
So I'm gonna move us along. We can come back to this. I mean, I wanted to let this conversation breathe a little bit. I do want to make sure for the public, we heard a couple acronyms. PLUS is the preliminary land use system. Service, and TID is Transportation Improvement District. So just so people know what we're referring to. Bob, I'm gonna move us on.
Just one,
Bob,
5 seconds.
I'm gonna move us on. I'll have time at the end if you want to come back.
We left
Bob. Because there were other people who raised their hand, and I didn't acknowledge them. I'm gonna move us on. Brian, keep going.
Okay, on to Minus Econo. So I don't think, I'll give this one just a brief introduction. This project has been with this group, you know, we've talked about it for many years now. It's been in right-of-way acquisition for quite some time. We are through that. The design is complete. We're ready to begin construction. You've probably seen some utility relocations over the end of the summer and into the fall. That's what we've been up to. We are pretty much preparing the advertisement package to go out to our contractors. And we expect construction to hopefully begin in the spring or early summer. So I'm going to just take you through the phasing of what you're going to expect to see out there. Yep, Bob. Sure.
Brian, your last bullet is different than what page 69 has, which shows the beginning at the last quarter of 2024. So is the work that's being recommended for the long term, is that going to obviously have to take into account the fact that you're now slightly delayed from your original plan that was approved? Am I correct on that? You were originally going to start construction at the end of the last, basically now, and you're not sure when, and I noticed you're not sure in 2025 is 12 months, so.
It's a bit dynamic at DelDOT when the project actually advertises. So the package is done, it's ready to go. But there's also a long list on the to-do list for us to get to. So probably at the time, yeah, we thought it was going to start.
I'm not criticizing you, I'm just saying that you have other things that are dependent on it in the briefing, which I noticed last night when I was looking through it. And
yeah, I suppose that should be updated. If it can be, yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. So I'm going to take you through the phasing, just what you can expect to see. I'm going to keep it pretty general, not too detailed, but you'll kind of see the progression of how we're proposing to build this thing. So one of the first phases of construction is really down at 5 Points. It's one of the add-ons that I think we've talked about in this forum, where we're going to be allowing, basically because we're removing all of the median crossovers, we're gonna end up allowing a U-turn movement at 5 points. So if you were, say you were leaving Cirque Bagel and wanted to go north, you'll be able to do that. Whereas right now you need to go through that light, use the at-grade loop, and then go through the light again. We think we can let you make that U-turn now. So that will be phase one, in addition to some of the off alignment work along New Road. So everything that you see highlighted in blue is the work area for this phase. So this is a bit of a minor phase. It's mostly at 5 points. Phase two is one of our big ones. So this is, you know, I said we're gonna start in the summer. You guys are probably like, what are you thinking about starting a project like this in the summer? Most of this work is all off alignment. This is one of our largest phases. When I say off alignment, everything that's off to the west of SR1. We'll be building the road and the shared use path under the Nassau bridges. So where the current trail is, that's where a lot of the work will be at the beginning, as well as formalizing the new service road, two-way service road in between Route 1 and Nassau Grove, and then connecting to Janus Road. We'll also be building the new roundabout at the Lewes Senior Center during this phase. Phase 2B is where we have a detour. So that will be when we are done all of that work that I just described. We'll have to detour minus Conaway Road out to Route 9 to actually build the roundabout that will be connecting to the off-ramp into the service road. So this is what the detour looks like. We'll be taking you down minus Conaway Road to the signal at Route 9 and then back up to Route 1. That will be the official detour. There are, of course, other minor roads that can be taken that I'm sure some locals will know. Phase 2C is then the kind of the conclusion of the off alignment work. We're then building the actual off ramp to the new service road. Phase 3, we then shift to the other side. This is when we'll be building the rest of the roundabout at right in front of Old World Bread. So during this phase, you'll actually be able to use the service road that was just built. So for folks that are like, say, in Nassau Grove, they'll be able to use the new service road to get to southbound SR1. So that'll be a dramatic improvement. And then we'll have a closure and a detour associated with this. So the intersection of Nassau Road and New Road will be closed in this phase in order to construct the remaining half that we didn't build right there in front of Old World Breads. This is what that detour looks like. We'll take you down New Road over to Old Orchard Road and then out to Savannah. Then we are proposing to basically open it up. So from this point on, it will actually function in its intended use as a grade separation, where we're going to allow traffic to use the road under the Nassau bridges. So you don't have to wait the full, 3 years or so to realize the benefits of the project. We kind of get there halfway through. This is when we're going to close all of those SR1 medians, which are the problem. Then we start working on SR1. Basically, we're going to attack that one side of Nassau Bridge and then the other. So the first one will be on the south side of Nassau Bridge. And we're still maintaining 2 lanes of traffic on Route 1 during these. But basically, you're going to see a ton of work in the middle. It'll call that widening in the middle. Phase 6, we will have a little bit of a detour here. We're going to use both sides of Tulip Drive to our advantage to kind of go around St. Jude Church. This is when we'll be building the off-ramp, the northbound SR1 off-ramp to Nassau Road. You'll still have local access to the businesses and homes that are on Nassau Road, but the general public passing through, they won't be able to do that. Folks who are trying to get to Taramino or to St. Jude will be using Tulip Drive. This is what that one looks like. Basically just closing one end. We're gonna actually use this also in phase 1 when we're building that U-turn movement, because we're also going to clean up some of the sidewalk and curb and gutter and drainage associated with that. So we'll be closing that one nearest 5 points using the St. Jude entrance, then flipping that during phase 6. The rest of the project, excuse me, sorry. So phase 7 is a small phase. It's a tie-in right there where Janus Road, just past the fire department, will tie in to SR1 southbound. For those that don't remember this part of the project, that service road that is coming off the west side of SR1, that new one that we're building, so Janus Road, it will become basically a free movement to the 3rd add lane going south on Route 1. So currently that third lane doesn't really begin to get to around where Surf Bagel is. We're gonna back that up and it will begin right where James Road ties it in. Then we build, this is a huge phase. This is when we're building the north side of Route 1. This is the new Route 1. This is where everything has been shifted over in order to create that service road along Nassau Road. And this phase still allows for 2 lanes in each direction along SR1. We're still allowing movements under the bridge. This will still function like a grade separated intersection, but there'll be a ton of construction in between the medians, you know, on SR1. They'll be with a concrete barrier in between them. Phase 9 is a minor phase. This is kind of a tie-in phase in order to connect everything that we just built with the new SR1 going north. This is when we'll also finish building all of the shared use path along the new Nassau Road, which is currently where northbound SR1 is. So all the shared use path that will connect all the way down to Greystone to the new, you know, network to the trail. That's where all of that will be completed. Once this phase is done, you'll be able to walk or bike pretty much from the Red Mill Pond offices. All the way to 5 Points really if you need to without ever dealing with Route 1. And then phase 10 is the end, just final project paving and striping. So this project we're all very proud of, very excited to see get started. It's a game changer for the area, and that's the update.
So we'll take a few more questions. Bob, I'll come to you. What was your thing? I just wanted to let them get through everything, but then we'll kind of wrap up. So any questions on any part of the presentation? You want to say something at the...
Yes, we left out probably the most difficult and important part of our discussion on the county, state, DelDOT interaction, and that is the funding, or getting the funding for all the additional work that is determined in planning. And that we certainly were thinking that too, probably, right? That there is a certain lag period in terms of actually, I mean, there's a lot of federal funding that, like, what, 80% in some cases of funding to do this, but that still takes an offset of a year, right?
Yeah, and we still have to have the 20% match, but yeah, we can't, we can only use that percentage of funding for certain roadways.
Yeah. During the past month, it is obvious to me that the public thinks that money grows on trees. It doesn't come from them, or they would like it to grow on trees.
Mary?
So anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, in phase 2A, when you do the trail under the bridge,
Yep.
so trails stay open?
Yes. So basically, generally, DelDOT has an existing mode of transportation that is non-motorized, like a trail or a sidewalk. They have to keep that open during construction. If there is not one that exists, we don't have to do that, but we do have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Scott? That was my question. Would it alter the trail in any way temporarily with all the construction and
Yes.
placement of?
Yeah, so one of the way we're building, the new trail, if you're walking today from Old World Reds to the senior center, it's right down the middle, you know, on old railroad tracks. So where it will be in the future is on the other side of the piers that support Route 1. So that's actually one of the first phases. Like, this is just a giant blue, you know, working area, but one of the initial phases within that phase is to build that. Then we're gonna use it.
Could it all be like kind of phased in, but there wouldn't be a period where the trail shut down?
No.
Now, we'll build a new trail and then flip the old trail into the new one.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Probably gonna be some flaggers for portions of it when we're building the roundabout at the senior center to tell you can go or not, but other than that, no, it won't be good.
Bob?
Easy question. Have you decided on day work or night work?
Yes, so I anticipated you bringing this up. So we did do a night work survey. Overall, night work was supported overall for the project. However, I think George and I have been talking, and just kind of as we suspected, Bob, that most of the opposition to it was centered around the Nassau Grove community. And I think we're going to try to write that into our contract that we will not have night work there. But overall, the night work will be allowed. I should also, also mention though that it's phased and designed as if it will not be built at night. Is a tool in George's toolbox if he gets into a situation during construction where they need to blitz a phase, something, you know, sometimes it can be unpredictable. that is something that he can then offer to his contractor. But it is not actually phased that way. The duration is not phased that way.
One last question, Bill.
All right, so I got two little simple ones and then I want to maybe comment on Congestion routes. So on Tulip Road, at one point, southbound side, there was talks way in the past about making that a little circle with not coming out to Route 1. Is Tulip right there around the church, is that staying as access to those points to Route 1?
Yes,
As your plans are going?
Tulip Drive. Yes, Tulip Drive will be connecting to Route 1 at the intersection nearest 5 Points. That will still be there. The one closer to where the apartments are in the church will connect to the service road. It will not be direct.
Okay, and that's gonna be in phase 1, that
No.
crossover is closed off or not?
No, the crossovers will close in phase 4, I think it was, 4 and 5. So, that, we're not gonna do that until we're able to use the road under Route 1 to connect everyone.
Okay, then my other comment was, so I also sat on planning commission in the past, and I think the Councilman Riley's position, I always felt in those positions, when I'm brought a community or anything coming to do us, I have to go by, here's my documents and here's my rules and stuff. And a lot of times, DelDOT's predictions and their estimates and numbers are years in the past of what we're sitting at. And I think the big problem we run into today, and this is just me as a layman, is we get communities like North Star and some of these other big communities that are coming in. And DelDOT has done their studies in the past, and there's nothing for us sitting in those chairs to be able to say there's any reason that we don't approve those scenarios. And, or we do look at them because we've been told by DelDOT that it's all good. So that's just my.
No, I don't know about all the, we are required to analyze the traffic for access onto the state maintained road. We are not ones to say, no, you can't have access.
Yeah.
That's not our role. I'm just trying to be clear on the fact that we go through analysis, we make the developer go through very detailed analysis of their impact. And that is what we base our EIS results on, is with this many bits. This is what the developer's gonna have to do. They're gonna have to build turn lanes, they need to build a roundabout here, they have to put their piece back. Our role is not to say that you can't build more.
I don't, and for me, I don't see that as something I'm looking for you to say. I'm not in that position right now, so I love this conversation. You can say it really, but I'm not looking for you to say that when I was in that it's, they can or can't. I just want to know what is the safety impacts of that. Based on what they're doing. North Star's a huge community, so are these other couple that are gonna, at some point, be approved on Route 9.
Scott, I really want to move on to it, because we could be here till like 9 or 10.
Totally agree. Here till 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
Get their coffee.
So, Scott Collins again.
So I think what would be helpful for us on planning and zoning would be to get some sort of scorecard or something that would say, hey, for 2024, this is a no, 2025, this would pose a certain level of risk and some quantitative measure for us to go by to say, okay, well, here's your basing basically requirements from DelDOT so that we could impose those as part of the condition.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, is that the phasing, that gets, so we have, the phasing gets worked out when the developer goes through record and enters plans. So at the TIS part, where you're voting, is not when we work that out through engineering, like solid engineering, like, okay, you have this many homes that has been built, that's gonna trip the need for the right turn lane. So they can't build that right turn lane until, they can't build any more homes until they build that right turn lane. But that phasing, unfortunately, does not get worked out until after the lane goes to record.
And I definitely don't want you to spend precious taxpayer dollars building infrastructure we don't need, because I have seen roads built nowhere that sit empty because development falls off during the sessions. But I do think, Route 9 is a perfect example. It could already be dualized, and it would probably be near capacity soon. And I think that's what we're hearing from all of the citizens of Sussex County. I know that the council is taking a ton of heat. We take a bit of heat ourselves.
We're actually doing coastal corridors, the same team is working on the Route 9 and when those, we're doing a much more in-depth look at Route 9. Shortly, I mean, we will have that posted, I want everybody to come. But on a light note, the Georgetown to Lewes last phase is being advertised in the next few days. So that's good news, great news that that's going to get done quite well.
So I wanna move on, again, that discussion is a very important discussion, it's an imperfect process, there's no, it's not like complete math, 2 + 2 = 4, I mean, it's difficult on all sides, it's a challenging process, I think it's working, the communication between VelDOT, the county and others, I think is better, but it's still a very difficult process with challenges on every side. And, but any last
Is there
question?
room to fix those challenges?
Not right now.
I understand that,
No,
but rather than just say
But
it's
Mary, I
a
think-
challenging situation that we can't
I,
solve.
well,
can
what I meant
someone-
is, for now, as a team, we listen to every discussion that we have here and we try to bring, relevant presentations back. And so, we'll discuss this as a team and maybe this is something that we can try to dig in on and see what we can do. I have no idea, but, we will talk about it as a team. I mean, it clearly, it's important, and it sparked a really good conversation here among the working group. Brian and George, thank you. I'm gonna move on to Gene Donaldson, which I'm sure we won't have any questions for this presentation, so.
And although we had some minimal slides from Gene, but that's because he's going to do a live demo. So I'm going to share.
And hopefully that'll work. Well, while they're doing that, up on the front desk, we have these cards up here, the DelDOT Interact. This is kind of the web portal now for this entire process. So if you get this, all of our 5 points information, you can get it when you leave, Bob, it's where you signed in up front.
Okay.
But this is where you go if you need anything to do with 5 points, with coastal corridors, and with other projects. So, all right. G, it's all yours.
Good evening.
And G, just remember, we got to project as loud as we can so that our people on Zoom can hear everything you're saying.
Okay. All right, I'm in the operations business. And so whatever happens, and we take care of it. And so I wanted to give you a brief overview of how all that's done. I think most of you know me that I manage the department's Integrated Transportation Management Program, the 24-hour Transportation Management Center, which is near Smyrna, is where the 24-hour PMC is. And for the last almost 30 years, we've been building the system I'm going to show you. And so I'm going to quickly go through this, but I keep this on. If you see my state cards out in the parking lot driving around, and next to me is what I'm going to show you is on. And I'm not looking at it when I'm driving, right? And so we are in connection with Waze, and we get their data. We are trying to work with them, not trying, we're finding the avenues to better exchange data, because I'm going to see, I'll show you how we can collect data. From the 24-hour TMC, whatever's happening that impacts the state's transportation system, we're putting out information. You've heard me say, I try to simplify this to three functions: control, signals and all of that, monitoring, all the detection stuff and cameras you see, and information. It's critical that we're putting out real-time information about what's happening on the system. So when information comes into the TMC, we put that out in a variety of formats. And an example is, if I just click on one, you can see that's construction, short-term, and so forth, without taking much more time with that. Let me turn that off. The other information that comes out is longer-term projects like you're talking about. And that's put out by our community relations group. And so, but we track it still as something we need to notify the public about, of the longer-term projects that are going on. So if you click on any of these, you'll see information about that project. Now let's get into the day-to-day business. Just to show you, over the last 30 years, we've put in thousands of detection devices. And that's given us real-time information on what's happening. And so it looks like right now they've got the Wavetronic system down. I'll be making a phone call. See the W's? They're all white. It means we've lost that system. And I just looked at it and it was there. So I'll be talking to the TMC when I leave here. All right, but if you click on any of these, let me go down to our favorite spot. And I think most of you know, I live down Fenwick. For 27 years, I've been driving from Fenwick to Smyrna. And so I'm very familiar with your favorite road. So if we look at this, then you can see what the hourly volume is right now. Occupancy is the congestion part. For us to do the signal systems and all that, if there was a backup, you wouldn't be counting many cars. So the signal system would go down in cycle length. And so we have to look at both. We have to look at the delay and the volume. So if the delay goes up, we're adjusting for that, and so on. This is all real time. And so, again, across the state, the ones with the W also gives us speed. And so that's information. We save all of this information. It's used by a variety of organizations and so forth. Here's the other thing everybody's interested in is travel time. As you can see, the green over in Maryland, I think some of you know I came from Montgomery County, Maryland after 27 years to take this job. And so I have contacts. We put sensors over in Maryland that would tell us the beach traffic coming into Delaware. And so you can, as the colors change, that's telling you there's increasing delay. So you see red, there's an issue. Let's go back down here. And right now, there's really no delay in Rehoboth. And so, but if there was, if I wanted to look, see that light colored green? If I click on it, then it's telling me, let me get this thing out of my way. Then it's telling me the current travel time is 3 minutes. If there was no, or if they were doing the speed limit, it would be 2 minutes. So for a class here, that's a 1 minute delay, right? Okay. So as it gets worse, and it's telling us, it's getting worse.
You're saying right now?
You're looking at it right now.
So
basically within 5 minutes is what I'm showing you. And so, that's why it's on in my car. because I can quickly glance and say, there's a problem. And if you see things out there, I think all of you know that our TMC is 24 hours a day. And in Delaware, you can reach the TMC by dialing #77 on your phone or 659-4600. And the staff will be glad to talk to you. We rely on information to say, don't assume we know it. You see something that's in the roadway, I have this saying, from a bag of trash in the roadway to an overturned tanker truck on fire to a major storm event, that's all managed in Delaware through the TMC.
They're happy to talk to you about traffic issues, not about other issues.
Yeah.
Just about.
At 1 in the morning, they'll probably talk to you. I've reported 2 deers on my way up.
So Gene, let's say, everything's good, and then something's not good, and the TMC sees that based on the data that they're getting, they see, the green turn to whatever color, eventually red. What are they doing at that, what are the kind of tools in their toolbox at that point to be able to, because when you're the driver on the road and all of a sudden the system breaks down, I think that this group would like to know, I'd like to know, they're on it. Well, what does that mean when we say they're on it? Because they see it. What are they doing? How do they kind of pull levers or whatever to try to, help that out?
What is the impact of whatever it is? We are also on the police and fire computer-aided dispatch system. So we're on a variety of things. We're in constant communication with our partners. So they're letting us know there's an accident. If we hear the word fatal, this is going to be there a while. And so we're taking actions to get Delaware forces to whatever's going on when necessary. We're in contact with our partners. And depending what it is, if it's a traffic signal system is there, which I'll show you here in a second, we can adjust the traffic signals. The detour information is all coming from us, basically. So it's a constant 24 hours a day, up and down, up and down. So, hello.
Gene, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I've seen this happen. A 10-minute traffic stop on the Superhighway South has caused a 7-mile backup very quickly in rush hour, let's say, going south. So do you get, when a cop pulls somebody over, do you, at least some places get a report of that automatically in the TMC? Is that?
No, we don't watch the CAD that closely to see that the officers pull somebody over.
Yeah. I had that.
But the system and other things.
Okay.
If it's really impacting with something, just a trooper stay, and it does.
Yeah.
And so what we're building is the signal system is automatically adjusting to whatever's going on. What we're enhancing that with, and I think I talked about it some last time I was here, we're enhancing this whole system with artificial intelligence and machine learning. It will be one of the more advanced systems in the United States. We're already testing it. Some of the times I'm testing it right here. Another neat little feature that I'm testing right now is a safety feature. And so, big thing to me all these years, again, I've been in the business 50-some years, is red light running, those kinds of things. We're testing technology right now that X amount of the signals right out here, I have this app. And we've integrated into this system. As I'm driving down the road, the signal's changing. I see the signal changing. I know it's working, but all it's displaying is if it senses my vehicle is not stopping, it's warning me there's a red in front, and there's a red now. If I get close to that signal and it's still, I'm not slowing down, it screams at me, stop, 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 and lights flash and all that stuff. think about 1,200 or more signals is what we have that are communicating to your car in the future, but to you, that to help improve safety. And the least, and we talk about it, if there's a fender bender or a fatal or whatever, it impacts the transportation system. If we can respond and know about something quicker, we rely on people to report, respond to it, take care of it, that reduces that demand. So, cameras, let me go back. As you can tell over the years, we've built cameras of them. For some reason, there's a whole bunch right down here. I wonder who did that. So, I didn't, if I had my computer up, I would show you the real system, and I can control it, any of those cameras you see. Hopefully that'll come up here. There it is. So, hey, no problem on Route 1 right now. And that'll spin here eventually. But, so we have all of these cameras, we have thousands of detectors and everything, and it's all real time.
Since it was a pop-up and we didn't get it.
Yeah, I
on
don't think
Main
we're
Street,
seeing what
so
you're seeing.
We trust you. I think because it's a pop-up window, it's not cooperating.
If we
But
figure it out,
if they download the Delaware app, they can
see everything I'm showing you, you'll see the cameras and everything.
So, Gene, I want to move you along a little bit, but again, I want to allow some questions from the working group, but you know when Gene gave his presentation, I forget, a year ago or two, you know, it was a lot of, AI, it was a lot of the technology, it was a lot of, you know, what's kind of coming. What we wanted, Gene to focus on today was kind of like, well, you know, how is his team dealing with issues? I mean, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than just sort of that sense of, I'm stuck in traffic, I don't know, does someone know I'm here, and is someone trying to do something about it? And I think, you know, nothing can just happen like that, but they're monitoring everything, and they're trying to pull levers the best they can to free things up. But, you know, it's hard. Suddenly, you know, an ambulance comes through and everyone pulls over, and now there's traffic and things just build. It's a very, very difficult process to get it to, you know, to be perfect. But, you know, his team is doing everything they can to try to alleviate these issues with technology and with, you know, historical, knowing, you know, when you hear, like you said, you hear the word fatal, you know, it's going to be something long-term. When you hear something else, it may naturally kind of work its way through. But any questions about this?
Let me just hit you with the signal part.
Okay, yeah, go one more.
Because that's the big thing. And so, as you can see, this is every signal in the state, basically. We took over running the city of Wilmington signals a few years back. So everything is connected. So if I go down here, my one last move is, and I want to know how Route 1's running at the beach. Did you see the signals get bigger when I clicked on them? Those are all in a group. That's how we coordinate signals. People swear we don't. I swear sometimes we don't, but we're adjusting them. And if you look over here, you can see it's running right now on 165 balance. So it's trying to progress traffic in two ways. We can, if there's an incident, we can manually change that group to wherever way we want it to go, whatever timings we want and so forth. It's the most powerful tool we have, is being able to control every traffic signal in the state. I'll stop.
So, Bill Davis, good. So is this the public facing side that you're showing us right now or is this your?
No, it's on the app and everything, and here, I'll offer.
But you can't change the signal.
I'm just trying to think if I gotta get back on the list.
I got 5 empty positions. I got 5 empty positions. Anybody wants to come up and I'll let you know.
Do we get the signal control?
Wait a second, I was first.
So you are timing signal.
Councilman Raleigh.
You are timing, because if you go to Ocean City, I mean, it's amazing, you know, you can look straight down the road and it's like every green turns all at the same time. If you maintain the right speed, it seems like you can hit every light, you know, and I don't know we're quite to that point, are we? Or can we?
The issue is, depending on the spacing of the signal and the demand, like I said, we call it inbound or outbound directional. And I go through Ocean City, I live there, so it's, where we're taking the system is with AI and so forth, it cannot. The hardest thing to do is coordinate two directions. If you run, even in Ocean City, you're going to see if they're running one direction, the other direction won't work the same. But the way they're the other thing about it is basically all their signals are the same. The crossing distance is the same across Route 1 for meds.
Right.
All the timings are almost the same
They are.
at every intersection. Now look at our intersections,
They're very.
because they're not in an urban environment. So, and you're talking about expanding them tonight. And so there are a variety of types of designs and movements. And, I'll be glad to go over with that.
The other thing is that,
Councilman, can I one thing what Gene said there, and I'll let you, you know, with Ocean City, kind of that grid system,
right,
there isn't as much demand on either side, and, you know, when you're coming down Route 1 and you have 9, and you've got 24, and, you know, you've got a lot more demand trying to get onto it, than I think you do at Ocean City. So it's a very different environment. Go ahead with what you were gonna say.
well, the other question has to do with ambulances. My understanding is they need to trip the light. And if they do my understanding, I've heard that it can take 5-6 cycles before traffic kind of renormalizes again. Can AI improve that?
In Montgomery County, we didn't have fire prevention. In Delaware, we have fire prevention. When you see the flashing light on that truck, we have sensors on every traffic signal. And that's telling them the signal goes into a preempt mode. It's taken out of the system. It's now running a special, going to hold that phase on for that fire truck or ambulance to get through, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But then, when they go past it and it goes back into normal, now it has to get back in step with the rest of it.
Right.
So the way, you all know this area better than I do, a good portion of the fire runs are using Route 1, right? To get to the hospital for that. So those preemptions are having an impact on the signal.
So can AI improve that?
With the control of being changed also, and we're working on that. You're always gonna have an issue when, you're just taking the control of the controller and then holding the phase so something can go through. Now you gotta get it back. With AI and all, we'll be doing more prediction and more, how many steps does it take to get us back? And what's the best way to do it? Without us figuring it out, the software will do it.
So, I'm gonna end this there. I'm gonna bring Lee up to move us on. And, you know, I think, I mean, it's a difficult job what Gene has, because obviously, when you're the one on SR1, you want that to be you want Gene to fix the problem when you're on SR1. When you're on the side street, you're like, well, why is the light so long, giving SR1 all the priority? I'm trying to get out there. I mean, it's like, it's hard to balance that, you know, well, but, you know, again, Gene, thank you. As Gene likes to say, whenever I talk to him, you know, this area gets a lot of his focus because he drives through here every single day. And so he sees what's happening. So, he knows this area. All right, thanks, Gene. So Lee is going to come up to do two presentations, one on our low stress bikeway and then our phase 2 implementation plan. I know Mike Tyler has something he wants to bring up related to biking. So we'll do that at the end of this first bikeway presentation. Leah?
How y'all doing tonight? Leah Cassandra, happy to be here. I know a number of you have heard updates on this study, which has been around for a couple of years now before. So I beg your patience as I cover some background for new members of the working group and members of the public. but let's just jump right in. So the goal of the SR1 low stress bikeway study is to make things safer for people biking around the beaches, right? We've had a lot of investment in recent years in the trail system, but that doesn't mean it feels great to get everywhere you want to go, because there's a lot of places the trails don't get you. So we also wanted to take a look at how can we get folks from the communities to destinations on Route 1 itself a little better, right? We've been hearing a lot about traffic, and one thing we wanted to explore was whether we can make some short trips, so maybe a mile or two, be a really quick bike ride, 5 or 10 minutes. Make it a little easier for people to pick a bike or walk instead of getting in their car. Because every car that does have to get out on Route 1 to go a block to turn into a driveway is more congestion, right? And we're not saying everyone's going to choose to bike. We know they're not, but we know a lot of people down here do. And especially with the availability of e-bikes and other electric mobility devices, that it's an option for people longer, and it's an option longer during the year. So that's a big piece of this study. Now, when we say low stress, we're talking about things like trails, things you can bike on and not feel like you're taking your life in your own hands. Now, biking on one in that shared bus bike lane, that is the opposite of low stress. That is super high stress, and very few people are willing to do that. So this chart is a study that's been done across the nation that talks about, okay, well, how many people are those highly confident riders? So this is percentages of the biking population. How many people are actually crazy enough, I'm not, to go bike on places like Route 1? And it's really only 4 to 7% of the entire cycling population, which is very few people, right? So when the state is investing in bike infrastructure, we are investing in things that most people want to use, right? And that is not facilities like the shoulder of Route 1, that is low stress facilities like trails that are separated from traffic. Now, it's not all trails. It's also neighborhood streets. Many of you live in very nice residential neighborhoods, traffic volumes are low, speeds are low, you can bike in your neighborhood just fine. The problem is getting out to where you need to go, right? So we want to close those gaps. So we started looking at, our focus is on Route 1, getting along and across Route 1, but, biking, just like roads, it's a network, right? You can't, again, we're looking at the whole system. So those blue lines you see are actually our current existing pathway system. You'll see some dotted lines that are pathways coming in soon. Actually, one there just above the big diagonal line, which is the Georgetown Lewes Trail, is Mines Conway that Brian and George were talking about a little bit ago. And all those other lines represent different types of riders. So the dark green is low stress. So those are those neighborhood streets that are good. But the yellow, same with Gene's methodology, usually in transportation, red is bad, right? So red is those high stress streets. But again, our focus is really right along Route 1 there, that highlighted area. So we wanted, with the study, to identify, are there more places we can get across Route 1? There are a number of at-grade crosswalks right now that people walking and biking can use, but they're pretty far apart, especially up here towards 5 Points. And also, are there more parallel routes along one? Now, you all know this is not an easy problem to solve. We have decades and generations of development that prevent solving this problem, but we wanted to develop some ideas of how to do it. One more fun chart for the night. This takes kind of some of the decision-making out of what we used to, when we used to be like, oh, does it need to be a trail? Should be an on-road bike lane? What's okay? So this shows on the y-axis, remember which is right, the volume of cars, right? So starting at 0 up to 10,000 cars a day on a road. And the x-axis is speed. So again, your level of comfort on when you're biking is directly tied to those things. So if you are in a position where you're on a low speed, low volume street, again in that corner, you may be okay with a bike lane or just share the road with the cars. But as soon as you get up to 4,000 and up to 7,000, all of a sudden those numbers flip. And similarly, as you get faster, Brian mentioned 35 miles per hour is kind of a move in that direction to 9. That's better. That's safer than what's out there right now, but it's still pretty fast if you're on a bike. You're unprotected by a car. So again, once we get faster speeds, higher volumes, we want that separate facility to keep people safe, and so people both feel safe and are safe, because we know what can happen if you're walking and biking and get struck. Austin, thank you for presenting on those issues. So this is kind of a rule of thumb that the federal government puts out about, we look at a road, we can anticipate the speed of the road and the volume of cars on that road. But we can't put trails everywhere, there's not space. So into a really busy map. So this map has a lot of pretty colors on it. The light blue lines are existing trails. And then we kind of have the pinks and the purples. And the pinks and the purples are great because they're already happening. So one of the big challenges with the study was just wrapping our hands around all of the projects that are already in the pipeline that Brian and George are working on that are getting done now and that are in the CPP budget and are programmed to have bike facilities and pedestrian facilities as part of them. So you'll see funded projects. These are projects that are coming up soon. So Plantation's listed there. Those are getting done. Minos Conway is labeled as number 1. And as Brian shared, that's going to have a lot of new pathway affiliated with it. The pink projects are planned. So that means they're a little further out in the capital budget and or there's been planning dollars in Pam's shop already allocated to really figuring out what the design should look like. And those are shown in pink. So you can tell it's kind of a game of connecting the dots, right? We want to tie into the great network we have in Georgetown, Lewes already, and then build from there. And then we get into our recommendations. And that's what you will see in the darker blue, labeled A, B1, and B2. So that is really limited in this part of the corridor because there's already so many great projects in the pipeline. So I'm focusing on the northern end. We have the same map for further south. We're not going to get into that because y'all are focused on the 5 Points area. But one of the key connections we see that needs to be made is to some of those existing crossings. So there's no way to cross Route 1 at 5 Points, and there's not going to be anytime soon, right? You have to go up to the Georgetown Lewes Trail and go under Route 1, and that's going to stay open. Exciting to hear that's going to stay open, or you have to go all the way down to Dartmouth. But it is very hard to get from all of the neighborhoods on the west side of the road to those crossing locations. Minos is going to make it much easier to get north, but there's still really not a way to get down to Dartmouth Drive. So we have people who are maybe taking the bus into the Lewes Transit Center, needing to get to a job in Lewes, and there's really no way to get off the bus and easily get across Route 1 unless, you know, you wait for the next connection and all that. And there's folks who can't do that. So recommendation A is essentially pulling you down there. Oh, here's the description of the categories for your records. So here we go. Recommendation A is really proposing the sidewalk along Route 1 from Shady Road south through Dartmouth Drive be widened. So unlike a lot of 1 where it's shopping center, shopping center, shopping center, that portion is largely wooded. A big piece of it is owned by the state. And there are fewer impacts there, so we do think it is feasible, limited driveway crossings. And that, again, would connect one of our key originations of people walking and biking the transit center to one of our existing crossings. So that is one key recommendation for this section. Another alternative to that is looking at places you could, a way you could do that same connection, but a little bit off the roadway. So to jump back to our other map, you can see here, B1 is continuing that pathway, further south from Dartmouth down to our next crossing, south at Postal. And B2 is kind of an alternate that would be off the road a little bit. So again, we're identifying a couple options to kind of build the redundancy in that network. Someone in the back maybe open the door for the gentleman who's trying to get in. Thank you. So that's what our kind of modus operandi is with all of that. And lastly, recommendation C is an interesting, we were talking about development and what's happening. So down on the bottom right of the screen there's a very little light blue line. That was a frontage path built by a developer. And then there's a lot of great network being built by Plantation Road. And we also mentioned Mulberry Road Extension earlier. Mulberry Road Extension is that light pink line here. And that will have, when it is done, whether the combination of developer construction and Delaware construction will have side paths on both sides of it, what the report called for. So looking long term, you know, we have a major investment coming in. We have a little chunk of path there. We have Plantation Road. So just making sure we're connecting the dots. So you can see our dotted blue line there on the bottom would kind of tie together the state investments on Plantation and Mulberry Extended, the developer contribution along Cedar Grove Road, and kind of connect the pieces. Now, that's not a very high priority right now, right? Mulberry Road Extension is not there yet. It's not done. Plantation Road Phase 2 is probably quite a few years out. Brian's nodding. But what we want to do is document these missing pieces and kind of have a triggering mechanism. Our colleagues, I forgot to mention Anthony Alio from planning, who's managing the study, is with us virtually. Keep an eye on these things. So when things do come through development coordination to say, hey, this should be a side path here. when projects do start advancing to say, hey, we need to actually figure out what the design of this little piece of pathway needs to look like. So that is really what we'll be outlining in this study moving forward. So the last big piece you've been hearing from me about, I think every meeting for the past year, which is that pedestrian bridge at Marsh and Shady Road. So earlier I talked about there being two ways to get over Route 1. On the left side of the screen there's the trail, and then there's Dartmouth Drive on the bottom. Now, the 5 Points intersection itself, I don't think is ever going to be a friendly place, even if we change that for a place to cross. So we, as we shared last time, are looking at a way to close that gap, because you really got to go miles out of your way in either direction otherwise. And we have identified that as a likely place for a bridge, and many of you, and there you see some other micro connections here too, right? Shady Road is in there right now. Right now it's in the CPP calling for bike lanes. We're going to talk to Brian and his team, and they've been very flexible with hearing these ideas about seeing, instead of bike lanes, again, pathway. So the feasibility we have assessed of a bridge here, you heard about this last spring. It fits. We can have a full ADA accessible bridge with ramps on either side that'll work for people walking and biking and close that gap. So we have the transit center on the west side of the road. We have all the development, the new hotels and the residential on the right, and this would shorten those trips quite a bit and tie into the existing pathway network on the east side of the road. So a little bit of a rendering as to what that could look like. A big piece of this is constructability. We all know maintaining an open road is important, having a facility that could get craned in. So we are now preparing documentation. This is not something DelDOT is going to put in their capital budget. It's too big of an ask, but it is something that DelDOT is interested in pursuing for potential federal grant funding. There is a number of programs out there right now, and we hope will remain available to us in the future, intended to do this, reconnect communities. It's also congestion mitigation, air quality, and active transportation investment programs. So there's sources we can go after. The state has obviously been very successful. Some of these funds are being used right now to finish the Georgetown to Lewes Trail, and Newcastle County also got a big chunk of change for the Newport River Trail. So the state has a good track record in both winning and delivering on these projects, and I think it's in a very good position. So I'm talking fast because I know it's running late. Where next? This project has been around a while. We are, now that we have some lines on a map, and you saw I had in bright red on a lot of my stuff, graph. That's because nothing is final yet, right? We still want to talk to some folks out there. There's some property owners we want to have some conversations with, some communities we want to talk to. And then we're going to get into all of these recommendations. How are we prioritizing them? A lot of it is going to be timing with existing investments and other projects. And a lot of it is going to also be kind of demand, what communities may benefit the most, and then get into identifying funding. We will be having another public workshop, we hope this winter, early spring, before we finalize everything before June, the end of our fiscal year. So, does anyone have any questions before we jump into implementation updates?
Well, I know Mike does, but before we get to you, is there any kind of questions on anything that Leah just presented? Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm just concerned about.
Mike, project as much as you can, because you're about as far away as anyone from the island.
Bicycle Council, Delaware. I can't understand why we're not really putting a priority on putting a bridge over Route 9 from the trail from Lewes to Georgetown. I mean, that would be without a doubt. I can't understand why you want to cross the Goddard's Peak. I mean, Goddard's Peak, you don't even have cross access easement to get to Lewes. You have to go out on the highway in fact to get to Lewes if you're drivers. So that would be a simple way to allow bikes to go in there if somebody was on a bike. But anyway, I think the trail needs that bridge over Route 9. That should be a #1 priority, because how many cyclists use that bridge? How many people use that trail? A lot. How many people will cross that one? I've been biking here for 35 years. When I used to come right across that road before DelDOT put those turns in, I couldn't go straight across anymore. But I could go all the way across, to get the Plantation Road. But that can't be done anymore. Right. Cyclists have lost a lot of riding Right, safe ride, you're right, about stress.
Yeah, conditions down here are a little busier than they were when,
I'm sorry?
conditions down here are a little bit different than they were when you could cross easily
Oh, I know.
at grade, yeah. So our study did not look at, as you saw on those first slides, this study really is only focused on the Route 1 corridor between Rehoboth and Lewes. So we did not get into that piece. Now, there was,
Hold up, Mike, hold up.
so there had been, a couple of years back now, initially when we started looking at the bridge issue, that and the potential for pedestrian bridges, I remember that being a conversation, and at that point, the decision was made to focus on the one location. So we will definitely take back the recommendation for 9. I know, Councilman, you've mentioned that before as well as some other working group members.
Are you talking at Hudson Park at Cool Springs?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
We'll definitely take that back.
But eventually, we're gonna need, obviously, some sort of traffic control device there for pedestrians and bicyclists.
I've ridden it, so.
Yeah.
Kathy Colvin, at least there is a crossing opportunity right there at Dollar General. And I think, you know, my husband and I frequently bike that whole area too. And I think for safety's sake, you have a good option, and it's not far out of your way to go to that light, cross over, and when we continue the trail to Georgetown, at least you already have a safe option. And at that point, the expense of doing a bridge for so few people, I just don't think it would be worth the money.
No, I don't think a bridge would be worth the money, but, you know, a light that, you know, with
Maybe a safer
push
way to
button.
cross.
Yeah, safer way.
Yeah,
But the land, I'm also on the board of the land trust, and the bike trailhead is going to be on the eastern side of that property. We don't own the western side, so that's where it will be. Now, we'll have a pathway back to the Dollar General
right.
to make it, you know, you can go that way if you want to, but
Yeah, so
Probably the next
Pam
2
mentioned
years.
this earlier, we've mentioned the coastal corridor study a couple of times, and Pam mentioned that myself, at WRA, and our team, Andrew, Austin is fortunately the project manager for DelDOT, so it's the same team, fortunately, working on coastal corridors and this, and coastal was looking at Route 9. Pam mentioned we're doing some deep diving right now on the traffic data, because again, we understand the pressing nature of that, but we also, as part of the coastal corridor study, and will for the Route 9 corridor study, which came out of that, be looking at all modes of travel. So in addition to looking at the dualization potential and timing and kind of when do we hit these thresholds where, you know, things are critical, we will also be looking holistically at the bike and pedestrian connectivity along that corridor, because with new development, we all know folks come to the beach and they want to pull their bike out of the garage, right? And the great investment in the park network.
and if anybody was from Milton was sitting in this room right now, they would have a lot to say about it. Like, you already know that.
I'm familiar, because we're also doing the Milton Active Transportation Plan.
Bob, and then I'm gonna go back to Mike for his other point.
Two quick points. On the smaller roads, my wife and I always go slow down. She looks to one direction, I'm driving, I look at the other direction, and if necessary, we come to a stop and hope that somebody doesn't run into the rear. At the point in Cool Springs, if there is already a light in near proximity, I would think there'd already be a plan. I would assume that cyclists don't mind waiting a couple of minutes at a light when they know they're going to get across. They can take a break and they're not gonna get hopefully run over. I wouldn't count on it, by the way. People do run lights, but that's a lot safer than trying. So why isn't there already a plan on how to connect that beautiful trail that almost was a 4-lane highway? And just, you know, run some, you know, put some paving down so that people can, well, you know, have it be the normal path of the Georgetown, Lewes Trail. Is that not happening right now?
Yeah, Bob, George Pierce with construction. The last set of plans I saw with that, and I haven't seen a lot of iterations come out. I think the confusion is, right now, we built along past Cool Springs to get to the intersection. But then it goes across at the signal, and we're gonna build that out to get to the trail. The thing that's throwing everyone off is we built the trailhead back to the land trust area. That's not where the crossing is. That's a way to double back to the trailhead. So when we complete the next portion, we'll finish that. We got it to the crossing now. So we'll pick up everything on the other side and carry it out along Cool Springs to the trail.
That-
And
and last,
that'll time it, the intent is to get people to that signal and not put a new signal in,
great,
Quickly, Bob.
but that's not Cool Springs.
last point.
Sorry.
Everybody knows what the protocol is for interacting with bicycles within vehicles, because not everybody agrees, and that's what worries me. So whatever you decide on, you have to make sure that it's in the AAA, and you gotta broadcast that and say you're going to get a ticket if you violate that, particularly as a motorist, because I don't think motorists should be able to run over pedestrians and bicyclists, even if we supposedly have the right of way. So please take that into account.
Bob, Anthony Aglio's on. I think he wanted to come on and say something.
No, I was just going to reiterate that we do have a crossing at Fisher Road, which, as George said, is west of the Cool Springs crossing. As Cool Springs, the development develops out, I'm sure there'll be a signal there to make a direct crossing back to the park. And then, as George said, right, the connection now exists to go back along the railroad to the park. And then we're continuing west in the new project. Actually, the rail has been removed at a certain extent, and then we're going to start the missing 7 miles here, hopefully by the end of the year.
Mike, I know you wanted to bring up one other thing, and then I'm going to go on to the implementation plan.
There's one aspect of the reconfiguration is the Kings Highway Route 1 configuration here, and how is that being handled? Because that would be part of this group's concern, and I think it is, but I'm not sure how much is being taken, because that was the serious accident that happened there.
I can talk about that.
Jake Kirby was killed by a driver, and he was in the shoulder.
Yeah, so right there, there is a Delaware project that is almost completed design. It was actually combined with, two other ones. One was that U-turn that I talked about associated with the Mines Conway project, and also a project that was built last year at a landing where the Walmart is on Route 1, where we switched the turn lanes, we made it one longer to make the U-turn movement. That originally supposed to go out as one project, and the SR1 in Kings was included. The scope of that project is to sharpen that curve. The northbound to Kings movement by Community Bank is to deliberately slow you down. I want to say we use like 20 miles per hour as the curve. I've double spoken, but that project now needs a new home. So we pulled it out of that contract, it wasn't quite ready to go out at the time of it, when we were trying to get a certain construction season to basically get that long return lane in before the summer. And then we put the U-turn in with Mines Conway. The backup plan with that other Kings Highway project is to make it part of the overall Kings Highway dualization project. I don't think we want to wait that long, but we do have a mission to follow that long. So it's like, home, plan. We agree, we just, it needs to home, we have a plan that's nearly ready to be built, we're just trying to find it.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So I'm going to move us on to Leah to go through our implementation plan. We're going to go through this pretty quickly because we invested a lot of time in other things, and I do want to make sure we get to our public comments before 8 o'clock.
I just had Gene balance one question. I've been in Amsterdam where they have bicycle traffic lights. How many of our lights recognize cyclists? I have a bike that I can go over your Magna, whatever it is, it doesn't recognize it because it's not steel. No metal. I'm sorry? There's no metal. Right? So is there other traffic? Well, the other thing we're going to is what we call machine vision. That's basically a camera. And it will help us to watch the pit and bike ripples, those kinds of things. So we will be building intersections with that technology.
Leah?
All right, final stretch, we're gonna do it. I think most of you who are here are familiar with the 78 original recommendations from 5 Point Study. I know we have some members in the audience. Highly recommend you go to the 5 Points website. You can read up all about the details. They're lumped into 5 broad categories: generally at these meetings, we just provide an update on status changes. So the exciting news is 72 of 78 of those are either in progress, i.e. DelDOT is working on them, ongoing or completed. So cheers to all of you for such great work. And we've ticked one more off into in progress since our last meeting. So here's everything by status. The one that has moved into in progress is recommendation B15, which is about drainage. We don't talk about drainage here very much. We have started this effort by having our operations and maintenance folks looking into historic complaints received in the area. So that effort is ongoing. That's why it is in progress. But we wanted to ask you all, because you are out here driving around every day, and if it can be an email, that's okay. Have you observed any drainage issues recently? Standing water on the road, anything like that?
Hasn't rained in so long.
Please think of me next time we have a deluge and keep an eye on it. I hope it will be soon. I hope it's not too much at once. But please think of us. Maybe we'll revisit this question at our next meeting. But we are looking for eyes on the ground because, again, we're doing the back end check, but we would love from you all to hear if there's drainage issues. And again, drainage is something addressed in every capital project. You noticed on the diagrams and drawings, George and Brian shared there's stormwater management, there's calculations that go into all that to make sure we're accommodating for this. So our big long-term things we can't check off yet and will not be able to anytime in the next couple of years are the big recommendations. Study the feasibility of a grade separation at 5 points itself, and also look at our east-west traffic movements as a system, right? And this gets into a little bit of everyone's wheelhouse. Gene and Brian and George and all the projects they're working on are all going to tie in. So we rolled out this chart at our last meeting to kind of explain how we're going to approach all of this. We have Plantation Road getting towards, so you see the timeline across the middle when things are getting done, and the big projects that are happening right around the 5 Points area. We heard about Plantation. We know that's moving and is probably going to be complete in 2025. Old Orchard is a little bit beyond that. Will be complete in 26. And Minos even later. I don't even know if it's 27 accurate or may need to bump back a little more, but 28. See, we're nimble here. And the reason we're tracking all these projects is because all of these changes, especially Minos, are going to change how people drive around the area, right? Minos is going to open a whole new way to get east-west across one. So people who might have been driving down to the 5 Points intersection aren't going to have to do that anymore. So how is that going to change what's happening at 5 Points? So we can't say how that intersection can really improve until we see how all these other improvements work, right? So what we are doing is every summer, and we started this past summer, we're getting out there, we're doing counts. We're also staying on top of Gene and his crew. You heard all the data they're collecting, and we're gonna analyze those numbers in the fall every year to see how things are working and improving, and we'll work with Gene's team too to do a robust analysis with the goal of once the construction for all these things is complete, we'll be ready to jump into that analysis of the intersection at 5 Points. So here's a map of all those project locations and their extent, really surrounding the intersection itself. Minos is in blue, Old Orchard is in purple, and Plantation is in that red color. So again, we're doing annual counts. We're comparing the changes year over year, right? So right now we can't really say that much because we're just looking at this summer versus 2021 and 23. And we're looking at our critical times, morning and PM peak and Saturday peak hours. And we're asking a couple questions. We're looking at the total intersection volume. So how many cars are passing through the intersection on average? Because we want to know, are vehicles diverting from that intersection? That's the question we're trying to answer with that. We are looking at just Route 1 through volume. So that's not looking at east-west on 9. That is just looking north-south, just to see if there's changes in volumes on 1. So we can kind of rule out the impact of that. And we're also looking at intersection delay and level of service. So you all know, I think, what that is, but I'm going to get into it a little bit more. So level of service, again, we look at how much delay is happening in each approach, right? Sometimes you get stuck at one leg of the intersection, we average it, and then we establish A, that's free flowing, to F, traffic jam. Now, since it's an average, you could have great conditions on, well, at 5 points, more than 3, right? In multiple directions and have really bad condition in one leg, and that's going to make the average worse. So just because we have a D, E, F intersection does not mean all movements are bad, and it's constantly changing, right? Gene showed you your map tonight. Everything's green and beautiful. If we were to look at that same map from 4th of July, situation would be a little different. So that's part of the challenge here. Everything's live. Everything changes constantly and things can impact it, like the changing of the timing of the intersection. So we have detailed numbers here. They're again, not that exciting yet. We only have 1 year over year for each of these things. And our high level takeaways are essentially, total intersection volume, are vehicles diverting? Not really, we can't really tell yet. We don't have enough years of data, but we have seen some increase in the morning and decrease in the afternoon and on Saturdays. Not significant yet, not quite sure, need more data. Volumes along Route 1 north-south are relatively consistent between 21, 23, and 24. So we're not seeing big changes in the volumes of cars traveling along Route 1 yet. Again, we have nearby projects that impacted operations. We saw some delay increase during the week, but decreased on the weekends. But also we have some variability, right? Because the signal timing isn't identical year to year to year to year. And when Gene's crew tweaks things a little bit, we could see some changes. So we do know the signals were retimed in July of 24, which increased the delays during the AM period. And that was just a signal timing. And I know there's some experimentation that happens there that might revert back and we can undo some changes. So I say all this to tell you all, we are doing what we said we were going to do. We're going to be tracking this. We're going to be working with our traffic engineers and relying on Gene and others and his crew's expertise to continue to develop a nuanced understanding of how the road's working. So with all that, next steps, we're going to keep plugging away at what we've been doing. We'll be back here in January. And by then we'll be beginning to work on our 2024 annual report, which will document all this great progress we've been making. With that, did I do it? 4 minutes? Oh, I'm sorry. It's before 8. And I know we have a number of things from online folks as well.
So, any last questions from the working group? I know we went through some of that quickly, but we took some questions on the bike, but low stress bike study, but anything on the implementation plan? Okay, I want to go to public comment. I'm going to go to the online first and then come to anyone here who has any questions. So why is Q&A not showing up on this one?
Here, I can help you. But Austin should be able to solve this issue too. After here, open the Q&A. On yours, and then they can see it on here. It's not going to show up on this one.
Oh, wait. So I'm just going to read a couple of the questions, comments that we received. Several of these are from Sandy. Plantation Road is currently 35 miles per hour. It is really important to maintain 35 miles per hour beyond construction for bicycle safety. We heard about that from Leah, as well as pedestrians trying to use the crosswalks from Plantations to Plantations East. Also from Sandy, when will the crosswalks at Route 9 off the route? When will all the crosswalks off Route 9 of the roundabout be functioning? Is there an easy response to that?
Yeah, it will be before the end of the year. This is George Pearson.
Okay, so before the end of
Yeah, when we get calendar, it's tied in with the revision, so we have to readjust some of those sidewalks and curb building.
Okay, Mulberry Knoll might be extended to Old Vine. The county just gave preliminary approval to the North Star development. I don't see this in the plan. What's the plan for this? I think we spoke a little bit about that. We got to that. My spouse just got another flat tire on Plantation Road in the construction zone from another huge screw. Why can't the construction workers sweep, knowing cyclists are constantly precariously riding on this road along the left side of cones? So
I'll give you a number they can call and pass that to the contractor for insurance.
okay, so why don't we pass that along to but why don't we just remind the contractors if we can, but also let's get we'll get a photo.
I will point out there's a large store that sells many screws there as people coming in and out all day.
All right, so it may not be.
We don't use a lot of screws. I'm just on a construction site for a road. But the contractor on all of our jobs is responsible for maintaining the road. If things happen, people get flat tires, potholes, what have you. If anything like that happens, y'all have a website, TMC, and just get in a complaint that can get filtered down and we'll pass it along. It's negotiated with the contractor and their bonding and insurance. The state can pass it along. We don't get in the middle of that, but yeah, I can pass along.
Okay, and last one from Sandy, please remember that walkers and bikers continue to need access during those 10 phases on SR1. Don't send us on a 4-mile detour as we commute on the trail and road shoulders for work and errands, and medical appointments. Mary Ann Mahaffey, when is the work scheduled to start on Old Orchard Road realignment? So we touched on that briefly.
I don't think we answered.
I don't think so.
So, that project also completed design and right-of-way acquisition this summer. There is a lengthy utility phase that is currently ongoing. It is, tough to always pin down, that's a bit dynamic. So we think likely next year is when the road work would start. We probably have a year left of utilities.
Okay. Yulee cameras often do not work. I think there's several references to the monitoring the cameras. And the last comment online is from Bill Weller. The Delaware Bicycle Council formally supports the request by Mike Tyler to add the tracking of the project to reconfigure the SR1 Kings Highway intersection. Sussex Cyclists supports the Delaware Bicycle Council recommendations. Please add this project to the 5 points tracking. So thank you for that comment. Now we're going to go to any of the members of our public who are here. Sir, if you could kind of just come up to the corner, just because we want to make sure we can hear your comment or question. And just state your name when you come up and try to project so our owl over here on the table. Yeah, right there, that's fine.
Okay, my name is Bob Steinbeck. I'm from St. Jude Parish, and we're interested in knowing the timeline of when SR1, you're going to be working by St. Jude, because we're expanding the church and there's going to be a lot of construction going on. So we need to know the time frame roughly of when you're going to be at that point taking down that signal. And,
I'll get your contact before we leave and we'll get in touch. We'll be having a meeting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Pete Matson is on the working group from St. Jude, but was unable to be here today. Any other comments from the public or question? Yes, sir.
A couple things. Hi, I'm Kevin Joseph from Village of Bikeway. Well, obviously I was concerned with the Old Orchard Road job, which has been on the books for, I don't know, 20-some years. And I see what your scheduled timeline, and I get that, okay? My question is that I heard that Night Work's been approved for that job.
That one also, I think, yes. I was.
And my question is, how do you determine how many people to ask? In other words, I feel like if the people who are only directly involved with having construction lights shining in the back of their house, because my house actually backs up.
Sir, hold on for 1 second. Bob, let's respect this man's time. Come on up and let's listen to his comments, please. And no comments in the back. Keep going, sir.
So my question is, when you determine that you need to do a survey for night work, I get the impression that you can just ask enough people and enough people don't respond, you go, well, we're good to go. So my concern is, if you're only asking the people that are directly affected by that, or if you just do this general survey for people who really don't care what happens, because it's not in their backyard, as it were. Okay, so I don't know what the answer is.
Sure.
Okay, the second thing is, and we spoke to you earlier, I believe about about how, you can call DelDOT and they'll take care of problems. I had a friend of mine who lived on, off of Cape Neck at Overbrook Shores. Twice during the years that they owned the house, someone crashed in to their backyard, coming down Cape Neck. Okay, and in talking to their neighbors, they found out it had happened many years before, over the years, before the house was even built. That corner lot was getting wiped out pretty regularly. And there were discussions, I believe Ernie Lopez was involved and everything else years ago. And DelDOT's like, well, don't worry, we're gonna put that stop sign in, we may put a traffic circle, we're gonna do something to slow the people down. Okay. A few months ago, I was driving up Cape Neck Road. The fence was torn up, the fence had long since moved away. Fences tore up, or the entry to the developments tore up. It's like, at what point does DelDOT decide? Now, I should back up real quick. There were discussions with the utilities down there. There are actually utility poles and boxes there that regularly get torn up because of vehicles crashing there on that bench. Okay, it's like, at what point does DelDOT say we need to put up barricades? Yeah, do we have to wait for a kid to be killed in the backyard or a utility worker to be killed on the side of the road? There's documented evidence, goes back years, that corner is bad and nothing's happening.
Yeah, so if it came in, so you're asking for like guardrail installation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to remember there are warrants, strict warrants, because a guardrail, while it does help in the instance of, getting the road back on the road and deterring, there's strict guidelines on when you can put it in because you're introducing a hazard to the road. So it would have to meet a series of requirements for an installation to be determined. Now, whether that was done with that complaint.
I knew Delaware was involved.
What we'll do is, we've documented that concern in that location, and we will take a look into that. And if you want afterwards, we can get your contact information and get information back.
Could you clarify which part of Cape Neck Road?
Which
What
part?
part of Cape Neck Road?
At the entrance, the second entrance coming from Milton, of Old Bridge Shores.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a?
I can answer. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right, so on night work, anytime Delta has a project, we send out night work surveys. And the timing of that is on purpose and specific. We wait until we're closer to construction beginning. The reason for that is really two. If we do it at the beginning of design, our projects take, 3 to 8 years, depending on the size and scope, to go from, cradle to grave. We do that at the beginning of the process. People move away, opinions change, things of that nature. So we try to do that as close to construction as we can. So the project that I was talking about earlier was not Old Orchard, although we did do a night survey on that one, and that was favorable too, but was minus Conway, and that's because that's close to construction beginning. So, when we think about projects and who to poll, who to survey, it's a decision but made by the project team. My group looks at the project area and tries to make a reasonable determination of who would be affected, who would see lights, who would hear noise, and we have tools that we can use to do that. Basically, it's the limit of disturbance of the project and whose properties are nearly, or businesses are near that. And it's a determination, it's a judgment call made by us of who to mail that to. And it's a popularity vote, it's mailed out to that, and if majority mails back and says no, then we will say to George, you cannot do night work on this project. If people don't respond, that's taken as indifference, it's a yes vote, and then if there are the majority, added up, we say, George, you can do night work. That's the truth. That doesn't mean that the project was conceived or designed with night work in mind, and in particular, on Conway, it was not. So it is a tool in George's toolbox. If he needs to use it, on a specific phase, you can use that as a tool to say to the contractor, let's get this phase done quickly because we need to move to the next one, whatever that scenario is.
So it's arbitrary basically to decide who to survey.
I wouldn't use arbitrary. It is on purpose. It is deliberate. We do thoughtfully think of who to send those to. I would argue that, if you think of the flip side of that, and if you just mail it to a zip code, and our policy is that indifference is a yes vote, that would be skewing the results in the favor that you would want it to go, because someone's not going.
Well, that's honestly, I didn't know what the limits were. That's
Okay.
all.
One last comment.
One last thing. I saw that the schedule, actually, I got a letter from Delaware about the night work survey, and I answered it and sent it right back in. And it said that the job, if we cannot do night work, will go over 2 years. It said it on the document. Okay. So that must mean if night work's available, it's gonna take a lot less time. Right?
It will take less if we
Okay.
include.
I'm just making sure that that's valid. In other words, I don't want to see a job that takes 2.5 years now when you said if you're working night work, it's gonna be less time. So that's all.
Brian, is it fair to say that that would be the expectation? I mean, there's always other factors that can delay a project that.
Yeah. Especially a project like that, it's very large.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
gonna add from the construction side, you don't, just add night work on there's valid reasons. Everyone lives here, in the summer is when we predominantly can build a lot of things. As hard as it is for everyone here to drive anywhere in the summer, imagine trying to bring in a train of hot mix trucks to get, it's almost impossible. And it's times like these when we switch to night work, it's just purely from logistics standpoint. So that's usually listed on the survey too, Brian. We'll give, it's not just can we work at night, we say we work at night for these reasons. This is, if we are not allowed to, this is what we're, the consequence.
It's an effort to try to quantify it in a way, just to, that there's a overall sentiment that if we can also work at night, it will go faster. But just saying that is really not good.
All right, any other member of the public? I didn't get to, yes, sir. Just come up so we can.
Rich Barrasso of Milton, 2 questions. Number one is in June of this past year, the SR-16 US 9 corridor study was completed. But there was an ongoing recommendation with regards to future study of the US 9 corridor. Will future meetings have updates in terms of the progress of that work? First question. Second question is, it's really the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And that is the planned developments on US 9 will generate anywhere between 40 and 60,000 additional vehicle trips in that impact area. Is there any doubt that that traffic is not going to affect the 5 Points intersection? This is not a situation, if we build it, they will come. They've come. 700 homes were approved 2 weeks ago. My question is, when will the developments on Route 9 be a topic of this group right here? There's no greater impact on the 5 Points intersection than what's happening or will happen on US 9. When does it become the responsibility of this group?
So, I mean, I think we touched on that tonight. Leah went over sort of the process to kind of get to 5 Points. Yes, there's no question that any development is going to have an impact, and certainly the scale of the development on 9 will impact the 5 Points intersection in that area. However, we need to understand how some of the other improvements are impacting circulation and issues there before we take on the 5 Points intersection as a whole. And so that's the response. I mean, again, people can disagree with that approach, but that's the approach going forward in terms of looking at the 5 Points intersection. As far as the Route 9 coastal corridors.
Yes, Pam, you and I can kind of play this one back and forth, but as I said, that corridor study, right now, we are in that data crunching mode. So we have, there's a big model, a travel demand model that our team is working on, because we want to make sure by the time we are using it and bringing it out that it's as accurate as it can be, and as accommodating all the growth you're talking about and all the recent trends, right? Because there has been an uptick. I think we can all acknowledge that things are kind of growing a little bit faster than they used to. So firstly, that's what's happening right now behind the scenes. The corridor study itself will be a totally public process. We will be sure to notify this group. I will say the only reason we may not use this body to discuss the study in depth and the issues in depth is because the issues are so big. So we hear you. I think this has been a regular topic of conversation with the department. And while we may keep this group up to date, there may be a similar body and definitely public workshops and all of that, because it deserves that much attention. So we'll be sure to spread the word via 5 Points, those of you on the listserv. Pam, feel free to add anything else, but we're doing our due diligence right now. Best I can tell you.
And Rich, it's definitely not just a one point in time. This is going to be a multifaceted, multi-year, monitoring of 9 when the developments come on board, if and when they do. And we already have the CTP projects out to dairy farm. So really the look-see is to, from that west, how, when and what the limits are going to be. That's why we are talking about all of the data and everything. It is a constantly changing force of the number of trips on. And it also is, I mean, it's not just Route 9, like we have, development projects, making sure that they're correcting other roads as well, so that people cannot just use 9, but use the entire network. So for sure, more to come on that, but it is not a, like, like the coastal corridor is done, like, we knew that we were going to have an ongoing effort on Route 9 to continue to look at all of these challenges. So,
Unfortunately, the land use process doesn't stop. You handcuff people like Councilman Riley and Commissioner Scott over here, who need to make decisions. And it simply can't be a matter of it's complex and it'll take time. And at the end of the day, when if they don't have the most informed decisions, it's the public who bears the burden.
sure. And I mean, but one of the big things that we have talked to the county has been to those developments that run along Route 9, figuring out and working with Brian's group, like we talked to the county, we talked to Ryan, like figuring out what that step back is going to need to be for when Route 9 gets widened, so we don't have new homes, new ponds, new, what the hell can.
Well, can I interject, because just a few weeks ago, planning and zoning, turned down an application near Cool Spring for McDonald's because they felt it potentially encroached on the right of way. So they sent it back for redesign. So we are trying to keep that in mind as we're going forward. And we are, in fact, we'll be introducing updates to ordinances either tomorrow or shortly that will help strengthen some language to give planning and zoning a little bit more discretion in, if they have concerns to either delay or even deny a particular project. So that's what we're doing on our end, because we recognize that, one of the biggest things is getting the right of ways. Takes forever.
For sure.
So we want to make sure we're preserving that. We don't want to run into what we experienced down in the Ocean View area, with 26. And, hopefully we can preserve that corridor and, keep an eye on them, make sure they're doing it, so that,
Thank you. Mike, I want to close this out here. Very, very quickly, like 10, 15 seconds.
One thing that we're talking about, that we're not talking about, is called cumulative impact. And that was one of the things that Bob Wheatley and when we used to attend every planning commission meeting and every county council, Mabel Granke and I, and other people, Rich Anthony, we said, what about cumulative impact? You can't look at a development in a vacuum. You have to look at it all over and how it's going to affect it. And that's the problem this is going to have on Route 9. The cumulative impact is going to kill us. I used to cycle in Sussex County. We've lost, rural Sussex County is gone.
Right.
It's a big development.
Again, your point is very, very important. I don't want it to be minimized. I just wanted to get it out there because I want to get everyone home quickly. In terms of, I mentioned grab the card. Everything from 2023 before is at 5points.del.gov. 2024 and beyond will be on Del.interact. So make sure you have that. And our next meeting, and I'm not moving forward, are you able to advance this? January 27th. All right. Thank you, everyone. Sorry that we ran late. We had good discussions tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
January 27th. We'll confirm with everyone. If